Imagine a TV that doesn't just show you shows, but shows you. Every thought, every secret, it knows them all. And once it starts watching, it never stops. This isn't just a screen, it's a window, a mirror, and a judge all rolled into one. What you're about to hear is a story about a device that became more than just an appliance. It became a spectator to a life, then an editor, and finally, a director. Alex thought it was just a normal gift, something to fill the empty space in his living room. A big, sleek, modern television. He plugged it in, hit the power button, and waited for the familiar glow. But what came on screen wasn't a channel logo or a streaming service menu. It was a memory. A moment from his childhood he hadn't shared with anyone, a secret whisper to a friend who was no longer around. He dismissed it as a glitch, a strange startup sequence. But then another image flickered to life. A conversation he'd had just that morning, word for word. Then, events started appearing before they even happened. The TV showed his phone ringing just seconds. Before it actually did, it showed him misplacing his wallet, and a moment later, he couldn't find it. It wasn't just a glitch. The TV knew him perhaps better than he knew himself. It was a silent observer, cataloguing his entire existence, past and present. The comfort of his home suddenly felt like a stage, and he was the unwilling star of a show only the TV was watching. At first, it was almost helpful, like a strange, digital personal assistant. The TV would show him where he left his missing keys. It would flash an image of a forgotten grocery item just as he was about to leave the store. It felt like a party trick, a bizarre but useful quirk of his new gadget. Alex even started to rely on it, a secret little advantage in his daily life. But the predictions began to change. The screen shifted from mundane, everyday occurrences to something far more personal and unsettling. It started showing arguments before they happened. One afternoon, it displayed a heated fight with his best friend, Sarah. He watched the scene play out, feeling a knot of dread in his stomach. The next day, the exact conversation happened, down to the last hurtful word. The TV wasn't just predicting the future anymore. It felt like it was orchestrating it. Accidents started appearing on screen: a spilled coffee, a missed step on the stairs, a fender bender he barely avoided. Each time, Alex would see the event on the screen first. A horrifying preview of what was to come. He tried to change the outcomes, to defy the screen's prophecies, but it was like fighting against a current. The events would happen anyway, perhaps slightly differently, but they would always happen. The TV was no longer a helpful guide, it was a curse. A relentless narrator of a life spinning out of control. He was living in a constant state of preemptive dread, his future laid out before him on a cold, glowing screen, full of moments he hoped would never happen. The real terror began when the line between observer and participant started to blur. The images on the screen grew more distorted, more menacing. Shadows in the corners of the digital frame seemed to move on their own, faint whispers, like a crowd murmuring just out of earshot, would emanate from the speakers even when the volume was muted. Alex tried unplugging it, but the TV would turn on by itself, its screen glowing defiantly in the dark. It seemed to have a will of its own, an insatiable hunger for his life. One night, exhausted and terrified, Alex finally drifted into an uneasy sleep on the couch. He was jolted awake by a sound from the TV. He looked over, his heart pounding in his chest. The screen showed him asleep on that very couch. It was a live feed of his own room. But he wasn't alone. In the footage, a tall, slender shadow detached itself from the corner of the room and glided slowly towards him. Its form was indistinct, a blot of pure darkness against the dim light. Alex was frozen in terror. He was awake, and he was alone in the room. But on the screen, this thing was standing right over this sleeping form. They hadn't invited anyone over. The doors were locked. The TV wasn't just showing his life anymore. It was rewriting it. It was adding characters, introducing threats, turning his home into a haunted house with him as the only inhabitant. The screen was no longer a window to his reality. It was a portal for something else. From that night on, Alex never slept soundly again. He would stay awake for days, fueled by caffeine and fear, his eyes glued to the screen, watching the watcher. He was terrified of what the TV would show next, but even more terrified of what it might do if he looked away. The whispers from the speakers became clearer, sometimes forming his name, a sibilant, chilling sound that echoed in the silent room. He stopped answering his phone, stopped talking to his friends. How could he explain that his television was holding him hostage? That it was a malevolent entity that was slowly erasing his reality and replacing it with its own nightmarish version? The screen began to crack, thin, spiderweb-like fractures spreading from the center outwards. Yet the images behind the glass remained perfectly clear. A constant, faint, echoing laughter seemed to emanate from the device. A sound that drilled into his sanity. Now, Alex never leaves the room. He sits on the couch, a prisoner in his own home. His life reduced to the flickering glow of the screen. He fears the moment he dares to turn it off because he knows the screen will always know. It will always be one step ahead. So, if you ever come across a television for sale, one that seems a little too perfect, a little too cheap, just remember Alex. Be careful what you bring into your home. It might already be watching you. Thank you so much for joining me on this chilling journey. If you enjoy stories that get under your skin, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, so you don't miss our next descent into the unknown. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Stay safe and see you next time.